Hello, I'm continuing to analyze chess in movies. Today I'll be thoroughly analyzing a film adaptation of Stephen Zweig's book, chess novel, titled The Royal Game. As you could guess from the title and poster, chess is playing a pivotal role in the movie, so I can conclude that there's some good chess there. Yes, the bad chess streak of 3 on the channel is finally over. Today we are serious. We'll look at the most important and quality games. So, the movie's world champion, Marek Kuchentovich, is giving a simultaneous exhibition, and he's winning one game after another. For the first one, we'll look at the game played between him and the main character. So, Owen McConnor is playing black, and he's thinking about the next move. The position is on your screen, and if you try to recreate it based on this frame, which is logical, then you would notice that the pawn is obviously on d5, not d6, as on my diagram. And well, if the pawn is on d5, then the character's future words just won't make any sense. Okay, McConnor asks his crew for the deduction, and altogether, they decide to play c1 queen, which looks logical. But here the protagonist comes in and says, you promote, and bishop takes, and when you recapture with the knight, he'll play d7 attacking your rook, and even if you check with the knight, you'll lose. The combination is almost the same as Bogol-Zhubov, Alekhine in 1922. And he's right, except the fact that it's not almost the same, but the exact same. The position is taken from that game. This is the movie's inaccuracy, but we've seen worse. Now we'll look at the variation suggested by the main character. c1 queen takes twice, and d7. If you block it with the rook, white takes the knight and gets an extra pawn after all. But even if knight check, then the king attacks it while the rook is attacked as well, and it's still lost. After the discussion, the protagonist starts playing black and moves the king to h7. Now black wants to play rook c4 and win that pawn, and the king prophylaxis is really important here, because if rook c4 immediately, then d7 and you can't stop the promotion, because rook f8 is check. Therefore, king h7, and now white doesn't have many good options. The d-pawn can't advance as black easily stops it, and their rook should guard the c1 square. And even though white should really try hard to lose, the win is now far away, and with the perfect play, it's drawn. The world champion plays h4, and the protagonist says it starts an attack on the king side. I wouldn't say that h4 creates any threats, but that phrase is actually from the original book, where the position could be different. Black plays rook c4, after which white loses one of the pawns. Players make a move each. We don't see them. But in the original game, those were e5 and knight e5, after which the game ended in a draw, unlike the original where the players made a few more moves and then agreed on it. But it's drawn in a grandmaster game, and in the movie, it's a world champion against a strong amateur. So why not try and win it? Of course, this could have been pure respect and exhaustion, but it was worth it to play a few moves waiting for black to blunder. We're done with the main game, and we'll look at a couple games from the simultaneous exhibition. And at first I was skeptical about them, as they were only shown for a couple of seconds, but they were actually still really good. This position, for example, is taken from the Evergreen game played by Anderson and Dufresne, which we'll analyze fully. So it starts with the Italian Evans gambit, c3, bishop back in d4. Back in 1852, chess players didn't care much about the move order in the Evans. It became important when Lascaris found out that if castling d6 and then d4, black can play bishop b6 and it's winning. Anyway, d4 is best, as if d6, then queen b3 and white keeps the initiative. Takes castles and d3 as d takes c3 is a tricky position. Dufresne prevents white from forming a strong center, but the modern theory states that knight e7 with the idea of d5 is best. Queen b3 declining the pawn. Queen f6 as if queen e7, then bishop a3, rook e1 is really strong. e5, queen g6 as knight takes loses a piece, and rook e1, knight e7, bishop a3, b5. Black again tries to get the initiative. Queen takes kicked by the rook. Queen back and bishop b6, which is logical if black wants to castle, preventing bishop e7. But after knight d2, bishop b7 question mark. Queen f5 as castling loses to bishop d3, which is played anyway, and queen h5, which loses after knight g3 and bishop c1. Anderson, on the other hand, goes straight into the attacking complications with a royal fork. Knight f3, takes and takes, rook g8, rook a d1. Here black should play rook g4, and after bishop blocks the attack, queen f5, rook d7, brilliant move. You can't take with the queen because rook e7 and bishop f7 sacrificing 13 points of material in 3 moves destroys black's position. So king takes, knight e5, king c8, knight takes g4, leads to a complicated variant after knight d5, queen d1, knight d8. And here bishop d3 is actually best, and the queen doesn't have many squares. For example, queen d7 loses to knight e5 and queen f4 is met with rook e4, knight c3, queen trade, and bishop f5 check. White eventually wins. Now back to what actually happened in the game. Black takes the f3 knight, which seemingly wins a piece and threatens mate, but that's the moment Anderson got him. Rook e7, rook sacrifice, knight takes, and queen d7. A fantastic combination, which leads to the position from royal game white to play, and it seems hopeless. The g-pawn is pinned down, mate is threatened, black has an extra queen, but white is winning after bishop f5 double check, which is particularly brilliant, as the black queen could take both of the checking pieces, but not both simultaneously. So in the movie, the world champion's opponent resigned. In the real game, king e8 was played as king c6 leads to bishop d7 mate, and bishop d7, after which bishop takes e7 checkmate is inevitable. But not all of the games in this simultaneous exhibition had a real version. For example, this position can't be found in the database, and it looks quite surreal. King on g6 while the black monarch hasn't moved since castling is the most unexpected thing about this. But the position makes sense, and most likely the last move was d1 queen, not knowing about the motive of the advanced king. And white plays f7, which is mate, because the bishop snipe. By the way, if there was no bishop on f8, white would still be winning after f7, bishop g7, promotes, and white eventually forces a queen exchange and promotes. I'll end the video with this position where it's white to play, and at first I thought, what the hell is going on? The white knight is attacked by a pawn, the rook is threatened by the royal couple, the black queen is attacked twice but can't be taken cause mate. I was really surprised when I found this game in the master database. It was played between Wilhelm Steinitz and Kurt von Bardeleben in the 1895 chess tournament, nicknamed the Battle of Hastings, as it was the strongest tournament at the time. Since we have the whole game, I'll analyze it fully. It starts with the Ponziani exchange on d4 and bishop check. Here knight e4 was the best continuation, but Bardeleben plays d5, takes and takes, castles and if now takes. This idea of queen b3, bishop a3 and rook e1 will crush black, so black chooses bishop e6, trade, another trade, and despite the equal materials and an isolated pawn, white is winning, and Steinitz starts the attack with rook e1 and queen e2, threatening checkmate. Opens up the c-file for the rook, knight d4 and the infiltration knight e6, and after rook c8, the final stage of the attack begins, queen g4 threatening mate in 2. So g6, knight g5 check with a discovery on the queen, now a brilliant sacrifice. Rook e7, 59-year-old Steinitz finds a winning maneuver no matter the response. You take with the queen, white wins back the rook and has a knight for a pawn winning the endgame. If king takes rook, then rook e1 knight e6, forcing the king to the e-file where knight c5 wins the queen. Bardeleben sees that and plays king f8, and we arrive at the position in the film. The world champion, or in real life, former world champion Wilhelm Steinitz finds rook f7, and in the royal game, black resigned, while the actual game continued, king g8, rook g7, another rook sack, if queen takes, then the same endgame where white has an extra piece, and if king takes, queen is taken for free, and on the next move, white wins a rook. Therefore, king must move, and if it goes to f8, then knight check forcing it to the 7th rank, and the queen is lost. And if king goes to the corner, then rook h7 check. This seems like a windmill of rook checks. And here black resigned, but after Bardeleben left the hall, Steinitz showed a forced mate of king g8. Rook g7 again arriving into the same position without a pawn on h7, and queen h4 is the key to the position, as after black takes the rook. There's queen h7, king f8, queen h8, king e7, check, king e8, queen g8, king e7, queen f7, king d8. Seems to bring the king really close to the threatened pieces, and it's hard to calculate until that position. But in his brilliance, Steinitz continues the variant with queen f8, blocks, knight f7, king e7, and queen d6, getting the swallowtail mate too. This is a common mating pattern when the queen mates like this, and the king is surrounded on the diagonals. With this brilliant attack, I end the talk about the royal game. If you like the video, subscribe so I update the channel banner. See you later.